painted all of these, but I also stole them directly from other artists. But I actually recommend that you do the exact same thing. Let me explain.
So, as it turns out, artists copy each other all the time. Art schools even teach their students to copy the works of other artists. But I'm not talking about just ripping off somebody else's artwork and calling it your own. Instead, I'm referring to something called master studies, or master copies. Now, if you're somebody with any kind of formal art training, or if you've been hanging around in the art world for a long time, you're probably like, well, duh. But I have a feeling that there are some of you out there who are like I was not too long ago, thinking that under no circumstance is it okay to use another artist's work as a reference. My goal with this video is to show you that you totally can and totally should be copying other people's artwork. Throughout this video, I'm going to be working on 2 master copies of pieces from 2 of my favorite contemporary surface pattern designers. The first is this adorable cat spread by Subhashini Art Factory, and the second is this beautiful floral piece by Jane Branchflower. And yes, I'm going to be painting while sitting on my kitchen floor for this first one because I'm moving and I just sold my kitchen table on Facebook Marketplace, so I'm working with what I've got at the moment. Before we get into the weeds about why I think master studies are such a wonderful thing, I want to be super clear about what master studies are not and should not be. You should never copy the work of other artists and make it out as your own. That means you cannot sell any of your master copies or reproductions of them, and you also need to be really careful to give credit to the original artist if and when you share your studies on social media. It's okay to be really proud of how your master studies turn out, just don't make it seem like it's original artwork. Not only would that be immoral, but it could also get you in trouble. Now, master studies are also not just about copying the works of the old masters. Yes, of course, you can do a master copy of Van Gogh's Starry Night or Monet's Water Lilies, but you can also totally copy the works of contemporary artists and learn just as much from them. That's what I'm doing in today's video. So, now that that's out of the way, let's jump into why I think master studies are so valuable for all artists, whether you've been making art for 5 minutes or 50 years. The first reason is that there is truly no need to reinvent the wheel. I honestly don't know why it took me so long in my art journey to come to this realization. It's actually kind of funny because my background is in science and it would be absolutely absurd to try to do anything in science without referring to the work of scientists who have studied whatever you're studying before you. Not only would that be an incredibly inefficient way to do anything, but there's also an understanding in the scientific community, and really throughout all fields in academia, that our work gains immense value when it incorporates the work of other people. As it turns out, the exact same thing is true in art. For a huge part of my art journey, I was totally plagued by the idea that every single brushstroke I ever laid down on my paper needed to be 100% original. It somehow felt like studying the work of other artists and the artists that I love was somehow cheating, and that quote-unquote real artists would just figure it out on their own. But I've recently come to terms with the fact that there truly is no need to reinvent the wheel. Think about it this way. There are so many artists who have come before us and who have made so many wonderful discoveries about how certain colors interact with each other and the effects that different compositions might have on a final piece, and how to represent the world on a spectrum from photorealistic to completely abstract and everything in between. And what a beautiful thing that is. we can learn so much from all of those artists who have walked this road before us and really study each of their discoveries instead of just kind of hoping that we stumble across the same stroke of genius one day. By making master copies of artwork we love, we can develop a deep understanding of why we love that particular piece. Is it the unexpected colors the artist chose to use? Is it the way they created texture with an interesting use of their paintbrush or maybe another medium? And of course, the goal in doing these studies is to really develop our understanding of what we love about certain art and to figure out how we can incorporate those things into our own art practice. The next reason I love master studies is because they can help you come out of a creative rut. We all know that familiar feeling of art block and also that fear of the blank canvas or the white page. If you ever find yourself in one of those situations, or let's be real, the next time you find yourself in one of those situations, a master study can be a really great way to get out of that place. Doing master studies takes so much pressure off of yourself to make every single creative decision that you would normally have to do in a completely original piece. You can totally treat master studies as a kind of chill, therapeutic kind of art practice if you want. While I definitely think there is immense value in doing a more active master study where you're really studying every single decision the original artist made, you can also totally do a more passive study where you almost treat it like a coloring book. All of the creative decisions are already made and you just have to follow along as you look at your reference. Even without the careful study of every little brushstroke, this more passive approach can still allow you to learn so much. Now, something that I recommend that you do anytime you complete a master study is to sit back and reflect about what you learned and what you love about that particular piece. For this master study that I did of Subhashini Art Factory's cats, I learned so much. Okay, first, I love her bold use of color. I often shy away from super bright, kind of in-your-face colors, and I also have a hard time bringing myself to use colors that are not anything like the colors that a subject is in real life. But Subhashini does this so well and makes it seem so effortless. Like, sure, blue cat, why not? Love it. Okay, next, I am seriously obsessed with how loose and playful her style is. All of her paintings feel like something that came out of the kind of imaginary world I would dream up as a kid. I think that when I painted this study, I was a lot more uptight than she was when she painted the original, just because I was trying to copy her work directly. But I actually took one of her Skillshare courses a few months ago and was able to get into the loose flow she uses to approach her paintings, and it feels so good to just go for it and not overthink anything. Alright, the third thing is that layers make a massive difference. I think that especially with this super loose style, you really do have to trust the process. Those initial layers really just look like blobs of color. But when you go on top and you add additional lines and squiggles, it really brings those blobs to life. Okay, so let's move on to my next master study of Jane Branchflower's floral spread, while I talk about a few things that I like to keep in mind as I create master studies. Alright, number 1. Consider your own artistic goals when choosing artwork to copy. There are millions of beautiful works of art out there in the world, but only some of those will resonate with you. When you're choosing a piece of art to reference, you should be really intentional about it. For me, a telltale sign that I should consider making some master copies is when every time I see artwork by a certain artist, I'm immediately like, ugh, I just love it so much. When that consistently happens, it's a good sign that that artist is doing something that I love, but I might not always be able to pinpoint what exactly I love so much. Doing master copies can be a super helpful way to identify why you love an artist's work so much. The next thing I like to keep in mind is to be careful to do master studies of many artists' work. You might have that one artist whose style you're just obsessed with, and that's awesome. But if you only create master copies of that artist's work, you're effectively just training yourself to make artwork in the style of that artist, which can definitely lead you down the road of plagiarism, even if you don't mean to. Instead, make sure to make copies of a large range of artists' work and incorporate little pieces of each one into your own style. Ideally, artists who have completely different styles, like I'm showing today with Subhashini Art Factory versus Jane Branchflower. That way, you'll truly be developing a style that's unique to you while deepening your understanding of why you love what you love. Okay, the third thing I like to keep in mind is don't worry about getting things perfect. I even noticed a big difference between my mindset for the first master study in this video and the second one, the one that you're seeing now. With the first one, I was obsessing a little bit too much with making sure that each color was laid exactly the same way that I saw in the original reference. And at the end of the day, that kept me from looking at the big picture of the piece, and it ended up making me feel a little bit too uptight as I worked on that piece. With this second one, I think it was just such a complicated piece to begin with that I quickly resigned to the fact that my copy was not going to be identical to the original, but that I could still learn a lot from it nonetheless. As I said at the beginning of this video, since this is a copy of somebody else's work, it's not like you'll be selling it anyway, and you don't even need to show it to a single soul if you don't want to. So there's no need to obsess over perfection. Instead, focus on what you're trying to learn from that piece. For me, I have historically actually struggled quite a bit with florals, and there's something I really want to improve. So I thought Jane's work would be a great place to learn. Alright, and the fourth and final thing I like to keep in mind is to actually take physical notes about what you love about each master copy. I started doing this with master copies in my sketchbook. Like, I literally wrote down the exact things that I enjoyed about the original artwork after I took a stab at recreating it. This is such an important part because it really forces you to pay close attention to what you like. And the more specific you get, the more likely you'll be able to incorporate that finding into your own original work. Like, instead of saying, I like the texture, you can say, I like the way that this artist used little color pencil lines that are kind of unevenly spaced to create a really interesting texture. Okay, so let's practice this with this copy of Jane Branchflower's Florals. Okay, number one. The colors are pretty evenly spaced around the repeating tile. In my own pattern blocks, I've definitely noticed that if I overuse a color in a certain area, it can make the repeat super obvious. So I definitely noticed how Jane did a really great job spacing the colors out. Number two, the scale of the motifs is really variable. Some of the flowers are really big and others are really small. And she plays with color and scale simultaneously. So it's not like all of the big flowers are one color and all the small flowers are another color. She kind of shakes it up. Number three, greenery is a great way to fill in empty spaces. As I was painting, I also realized that it was really great to have 3 shades of green for all of the leaves and stems. Basically, one for highlights, midtones, and shadows. This painting helps me realize that I don't need to shy away from using a really yellow green, because I ended up loving the way it looks. And number 4, it can be really beautiful and challenging to manually paint a background. I often just work on a white background and then play with different backgrounds in Photoshop, but there's something really lovely about having a hand-painted background. That said, I thought it would take me like 15 minutes, but it was probably closer to 45 minutes or an hour to actually paint the full background. There were so many little gaps to fill.
So I hope you enjoyed coming along with me to do these little master studies, and I hope that if you're new to the idea of master studies, or maybe if you're not. I hope you have a better appreciation for what they are and also how they can be really valuable when they're incorporated into your regular art practice. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm still relatively new to the master's study world, so if you are someone who's done a gazillion master's studies and have any pro tips to share with me or anyone else, I would truly, genuinely love to hear about them in the comments. I would also genuinely love to know if there's anyone out there who is feeling the way that I was not too long ago, in that you're weirdly uncomfortable with the idea of like ripping off someone else's artwork. It feels wrong, and it feels like something that not a real artist would do. I would love to hear if I was not alone in having those feelings. Anyway, I hope I've convinced you that it's a super valuable thing to do, and as long as you're doing it in an ethical way where you're never trying to make it out as your own work, then I think it's all good and does not make you any less of a real artist. So I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please give this video a like if you think I've earned it, and if you want to support me for free, I would really appreciate you if you could leave a comment on this video. It actually truly does help it get seen by other people and helps my little channel grow. So with that, from me and Alicia, if you enjoyed watching this week's video, here's another one that I think that you will also enjoy. And with that, thank you for watching this. Thank you for being here all the way until the end. And I will see you very soon for my next video. Take care, everyone. Say bye, Mama. She says, bye, everybody. See you next week.